Okay. I was asked to write about Lynn Stewart being released from prison and returning home. So it's on the front page of today's paper. But, but if you haven't read it, I'm going to talk about it now, what I wrote. Okay. This was New Year's Day. Okay. There she was, standing, then walking slowly towards us, unshackled, without handcuffs or belly chain, and with a gigantic smile on her face. She was a sight for sore eyes, her inner and outer beauty reflected. Lynn Stewart's family, her 2 children, who are attorneys, a daughter who is a hospice doctor, grandchildren and great-grandchildren, along with her many supporters and attorneys were there. WBAI video producers, independent photographers, and videographers, Prison Radio's Noel Hanrahan and Amy Goodman of Democracy Now! Had also gathered inside the airport, waiting for what seemed like forever to welcome Lynn home. There were about 75 to 100 of us there. Yeah, it was great. It was a great crowd. I had so much apprehension in seeing Lynn because I've been talking to Ralph pretty regularly when he was visiting Lynn, and talking to Lynn on the phone. She would call him every night, and he had painted a picture of her as being in a wheelchair in prison, having lost so much weight, and just tired all the time. So that was the Lynn that I expected to see at the airport. And so it was like with a lot of apprehension, but well, I'll go on. It wasn't so, okay? She did not look like what many of us thought she would look like. We were just so happy to see how healthy she looked. We had been waiting anxiously to see for ourselves what seemed to be too good to be true. Our Lynn, the people's lawyer, woman warrior, and courageous freedom fighter, finally was coming home. And then she emerged. It was a day that many feared would never come. And I was among those many. We had been admonished several times by airport personnel not to block the elevator, the staircase, or the passageway. And so, we did that when they said it. And then when they walked away, we went back to where we were. And just like at the entrance to where the passengers were coming off the plane into the terminal. And so one of the airport women, staff women, she called the cops, okay? And so the cop came and he told us what she had told him. And we said, okay, she means business, so we better, move back. And then we saw the passengers coming off the plane, and Lynn appeared. She was getting out of the wheelchair, and Ralph was holding her arm, and she got up and she started walking toward us. And it was like, oh my God. It was from dread of having to see her in such a bad physical shape, and then seeing her just standing there, with this great big smile on her face and waving to everyone and taking small steps toward us. And she said to Ralph, I don't need the wheelchair, So like I was saying, we were being admonished by the personnel at the airport. But when we saw Lynn and her spouse, Ralph Pointer, we could no longer contain ourselves. We rushed toward her, carrying cameras, signs, and flowers as we chanted, we love you, Lynn, we love you, Lynn, we love you, Lynn. Welcome home, welcome home, welcome home. And with our big smiles and crying tears of joy, we surrounded her. There were so many hugs and kisses and congratulations and thanks that were exchanged. And a couple of passers-by, I heard them whispering, I wonder who that celebrity is they're all greeting. Yeah, that was funny. So when asked how she felt, Lynn said, there ain't nothing like freedom. But she did talk about being very, very tired most of the time, and said that she was surprised about her release because she had been getting to the point of giving up hope. She was notified of her approved release on the morning of December 31st by a phone call from her lawyer, who happened to be in France at the time, and by the prison officials. Everything happened so quickly after that point, after about 10 o'clock in the morning, throughout the course of the day. Lynne laughed and stated, when the warden told me I was leaving that day, he literally threw me out of the prison. She said to him, well, I have to pack a few things, and so I'll probably be leaving tomorrow, hopefully. He said, no, you're leaving today. And she said and she was laughing when she said it. She said, he literally threw me out of the prison. Okay. What had occurred during the previous 24 hours is just, to her coming home, seemed unbelievable. First, we, her supporters, heard on the morning of December 31st that the U.S. Justice Department had ordered that 74-year-old Lynne Stewart be granted a compassionate release due to her terminal illness. Her 10-year sentence for aiding and abetting a terrorist organization was also reduced to time served. Since 2012, breast cancer had metastasized throughout Lynne's body, in part due to the delayed medical care in prison. Lynne had filed a written request for medical release at the beginning of 2013. Her doctors now say she has approximately 12 months to live. The prognosis back then was 18 months, when she first started requesting compassionate leave. During the course of one day, we witnessed what the Justice Department, the director of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and the Manhattan federal judge could have done a year ago, or at least 6 months ago, what they did in one day, namely freed Lynne Stewart. They may have just decided that they didn't want her to die in prison. And we were all thinking of Herman Wallace, one of the Angola three, dying 3 days after release. Or they may have been thinking that they would incur some bad publicity for a so-called democratic country to have a prisoner die in, have her die in prison. Former slave and activist Frederick Douglass described this oppressive state, talking about the U.S., in his 1852 4th of July speech. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him, more than all other days of the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. Your boasted liberty and a holy license, your national greatness, swelling vanity, your denunciation of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence, your shout of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. To him, mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy, a thin veil to cover up crimes. There's not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than, he says, a nation of savages. There's a lot that I had to leave out because Frederick Douglass's speech is like 5 pages long, and so, but in reference to the nation on earth, no nation on earth being guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than the United States at this very hour. Lynne's case is known internationally. It's part of a global movement for social justice. We know that expecting the heartless to have a heart or evildoers to have a conscience is beyond reason and logic. The powers that be are utterly shameless. As December 31st unfolded, we learned that Lynne's release from prison was imminent. Meanwhile, Ralph was airborne on his way to visit Fort Worth, Texas, to visit Lynne, as he had done routinely since her imprisonment there. It was not until after his plane landed, when he was on his way to the car rental desk, that he got a call informing him of Lynne's fully approved compassionate release all the way down the line of command. One can only imagine how shocked he was when he got to the prison and saw Lynne sitting there in a car in the parking lot. He told me that there were like three matrons with her or something like that. She started, she thought, well, it's kind of cold outside, maybe I should wait inside. And she said she kept thinking and hearing the warden say, no, you're leaving today, So she sat out in the car in the parking lot. And that's where Ralph saw her when he went. So by 9 p.m. on New Year's Eve, Ralph walked into his hotel room with Lynne at his side. This moment was captured by fellow activist and producer Bob Lederer on the air at WBAI Radio when he telephoned Ralph to interview him about the day's events. Ralph always got a hotel room booked in advance, like maybe months in advance, and he would buy his airplane ticket like months in advance because he knew when he would be visiting Lynne. But so we heard Ralph say to Bob, I'm here, I'm trying to unlock the door, the hotel door, to get in. And so when he got in, like I said, unknown to him, to Bob Lederer and to us listeners, was that he would also be speaking on the air with Lynne. He was calling Ralph to find out, if it's true, has she been released, how does she look today, blah, blah, blah. Do you know when she's coming home? And next thing he knew, it was like, Lynne said, "Hi, Bob, this is Lynne." So it was just incredible. It was incredible. We were fortunate enough to see how Lynne's release impacted Ralph that day. When the plane carrying him and Lynne landed, he and Lynne landed in New York City. Ralph was standing tall with Lynne, grinning from ear to ear. Lynne described her freedom as coming home as sunlight bursting on me. "Yesterday at this time, I was deep in the dungeons," Lynne said. "Prisons are loveless." Lynne repeatedly expressed her gratitude for the tremendous support from tens of thousands of people in New York City, in the country, and worldwide. Safe at home with her son in Brooklyn, where she will live, surrounded by a loving family and friends, Lynne described her 4 years in prison as horrible. She told of how she barely survived the life-threatening chemotherapy treatments, but she stressed that she was worried about the women. She stressed that she won't forget the women that she left behind in prison, and that she'll fight for criminal justice system reforms. We also reflect back to this past summer and the many, many weeks that Ralph stood in front of the White House in Washington, D.C., in the rain, in the 95-degree heat, with his signs, with the banner, handing out leaflets, speaking to anyone who would listen about Lynne's plight. He and a group of supporters, protested in front of the U.S. Justice Department against the director's refusal to approve Lynne's request for compassionate release. Her request was sitting on his desk for months and months, and he had refused to sign it. If he had signed it, it would have gone to the Manhattan federal court, and the Judge Codal, would be at that point approving or disapproving of it, but it sat on the Justice Department's desk for months and months and months. Ralph said he saw no acceptable alternative other than to fight like hell for Lynne's release. His unwavering love, support, strength, and determination were contagious. How could anyone knowing him or Lynne not join in the struggle or not give up? All right, January 1st began a new year. What better way to start the year than to see the fruits of our labor realized, to have achieved a torturous, long-fought victory, to see our hopes become a reality. We dreamed what seemed to be the impossible dream and saw it come true. The day seemed so surreal, but we were believers once again. Ralph joked about renting Yankee Stadium to celebrate Lynne's return home. Okay. That idea notwithstanding, Lynne says we will definitely have a celebration party, and I don't know about Yankee Stadium, she said. Okay. On January 2nd, a second day home, she reported in person to the Office of Probation, which was mandatory within 72 hours of her release. All the conditions, now that at that time, January 2nd, of her release were not yet known, yet the ramifications may put her in the position of walking a tightrope. When the Royal Hand-to-Hand of Prison Radio arranged for Mumia Abu-Jamal to speak to Lynne by phone, she could not speak to him for fear of violating conditions of her release. To paraphrase the saying, freedom ain't necessarily free. Lynne's courage and principled stand have been inspirational. Ralph and Lynne took a firm stand against the government and the powers that be. Their position allowed us to stand too and fight back with and for them. The road ahead will be anything but smooth. Lynne faces more medical treatment as she literally fights for her life. She will have to make appointments with Sloan Kettering, the leading cancer center in New York City, and submit her medical records to them. She says she's looking forward to beating the odds. I've fought lions and tigers, and I won't let cancer get me, Lynne says. As we celebrate a victory over a tragic injustice, there are so many more victories to achieve. We must free all our political prisoners. Lynne urges us to take action on their behalf. She states, fight on, resist, resist. It makes life worth living. Power from the people made my release happen. She adds that she's skeptical but hopeful of better future changes. My commentary is a better world is possible, and we must make it happen. La lucha continúa. Okay. Wait a second. Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you. And all of you, I think, know Bernard White. He, he's formerly of WBAI, so he has an internet radio station program, and he called Lynne on Monday of this week and spoke to her. And I made some notes. Okay, if do I have time? Okay. All right. She said to Bernard that she was in tears listening to Mumia on CPR Metro. She says, I'm all shook up. Bernard, every day, he plays a commentary by Mumia of what's going on in the country and internationally. So Lynne started off telling Bernard that she had just finished listening to Mumia on CPR Metro, and it made her cry. Oh, okay. In talking about her release, Lynne says that the impossible became real. She felt like she was walking in a Never Never Land at the airport. She said, I still expect to hear some prison sounds. Now she says, I'm luxuriating being home and the outpour of love following me everywhere. She spoke to Pam Africa that morning, and Pam said she's on her way to New York to visit her. And Lynne was very happy about that. And she says, entering prison is a shock. She said, you're cut off suddenly from the real world. You're living in this parallel universe. It's like science fiction, she says. It's just so far removed from the real world. And she said the lives of the women there, were just cut off. Many of them had no more family ties, no comrades or friends who write letters to them, and that she herself had many lifelines. She got letters from all over the world. She says she even would get an update from Ralph when she would call him every night about what's going on, including some gossip, every now and then. But she said he was her umbilical cord to the world. She says, when you're in prison, you're a lost soul. So she's advocating on their behalf. She says when she feels well enough, she will, the women that she left behind in prison, and she wants us all to do the same. She says that she was shocked by the degree of callousness in prison, and so there's a lot of work to be done. The U.S. is saying that they have no political prisoners, she says, and she says we have at least 150 people, political prisoners, who are there just because they were defending their community, And so she says the movement now must show more strength. And she says she happened to be of the right class and of the right color. And so that might have contributed to her release. She's not sure. But, she says, I'm out and I'm still fighting. I'm still going to be an activist, as long as my health holds up. And she added that, she said, we used to think that the revolution was just around the corner. And I've heard Angela Davis say the same thing. Angela Davis said the same thing. We used to think the revolution was just around the corner. She says, but we can't forget our heroes. She says, this is rooted in the capitalist system. It's to keep the best and the brightest away from the people. She says, don't internalize what the government calls you if they call you a bad person. Our political prisoners need political solutions to that myth. She says, and then she adds about the cause for her imprisonment. She says, how could I send secret messages, to the enemy, or to the it was a blind shake, but to its followers, She says, I held a press conference with Reuters. She says, so what's secret about that? It's Reuters that I was talking to, So she says, it was put out there in the universe. Okay. Yeah. So, and then she talked about Snowden and Chelsea Manning and Julian Assange, and she calls them heroes. And so she says that we must do what we can to rescue them. And okay, so okay, wow, got a lot of stuff here. Okay. Okay, and she talked about Ralph, and their relationship. She says Ralph communicates love and caring. And in prison, they weren't allowed to touch each other. And she says touching is healing. That's probably why they wouldn't allow it. So I talked to Ralph last night about the plans for the Welcome Home celebration, and he says they're waiting to hear from Riverside Church for a date that's available to them, and they want it to be before the 24th of this month, because that's when Lynne goes to Sloan Kettering. She has an appointment with them, and she told me last night that she doesn't know whether they'll keep her or not when she goes, like to run tests and to, just admit her. So that's why they want to have the Welcome Home celebration before the 24th, because the hospital might keep Lynne. And so, we were talking also about the conditions of her release, because she did have to refuse to talk to Mamiya because he's a convicted criminal, and that would have been a violation, of the terms of her release. But she also said last night, she says, what am I supposed to do? Give a DNA test on everybody that I talk to, to see if they have a record or something like that, And so, she said she's just going to be careful, but she's not going to, turn people away and refuse to speak to them if she knowingly knows that she shouldn't be. So when I spoke to Ralph one day last week, when he said that Maria had called and she couldn't talk, so somebody here, when I was at the center at the time, somebody said, find out from him if Lynne can come to the center, if she can talk to us, if she can, participate in what we're doing. So Ralph said, he said, wild horses couldn't keep us away from the IAC. So yeah, that was like really good, So, and then, so she talked about, when she first met Ralph, and that was in the 60s, and that they were both working for community control of the schools, and that she refers to Ralph as her old man, and Ralph refers to her as my old woman, So she says, he's premium, he's dynamo. And she says she has absolute faith in him the whole time that she knew he was out here struggling for her release. And so she just says to us, admonishes us, she said, don't be discouraged, she said, and never give up hope. She said there's some things that we can't do alone, so we have to get this movement, what did she say, revved up, something like that. Okay. Okay. So one day this week she had to report to Social Security Administration. So she has a lot of stuff to do, to get back into circulation and all. So, but she says, like, I got all these people, wanting to do all these things for me. I just can't get over it, So that was the conversation, last night on the phone when she was at home. Ralph mentioned too that Archbishop Desmond Tutu has called to the House to speak to Lynne. He was one of her big supporters, you know. Yeah, and let me see, what else did she say? In terms of movement restriction, she says that she can travel within the 5 boroughs without permission, but if she has to leave the 5 boroughs, then she'll have to get permission from the judge, you know. So I guess like if she wants to go to Westchester or something like that, you know, the court has to give her permission. She says she's determined to continue to be an activist as much as her health will allow. One thing she's very concerned about is cancer brain. And that's terminology I just learned, you know. And when you think of it, if the cancer is spreading all throughout her body, you know, the brain has cells too, you know. So she even voiced that concern months back about her brain and how it might deteriorate with the cancer. And so one of the things that they're going to do, Ralph and Lynne and their daughter, the doctor, that's how Ralph always identified Zenobia, their daughter. He would say, my daughter the doctor, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so Ralph told me last night that he had been on the phone with Bob Nash and that he also went to a conference out on the island regarding natural and homeopathic healing. So that's one thing that they're going to pursue, you know, outside of the hospital. And Lynne mentioned also, she said, you know, food can also be medicine. So, and she mentioned that Zenobia, her daughter, the doctor, she went to Cuban medical school, you know, so she's coming from a different perspective, you know, than American trained doctors. Okay, so she says now she feels like an expert, you know, she can speak from experience about how horrendous prison is from the inside. And about the women in prison that she left behind, she says there's a need to teach these women how to be assertive with their lawyers, with their boyfriends and husbands, and with their family, you know. Some of them have these horrendous sentences that are just ridiculous, 20 years, you know, for nothing. So I'm just going to wrap this up now. She says, my victory is the victory of the people. We've gone a long time without a true victory, she says, an old-fashioned victory. And she attributes her release to pressure on the government, the Bureau of Prisons, and she says, I guess they decided that we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't, so let's just release her, you know? Okay, that's it.
People, you know, before it's in the prison, people keep saying, you know, it's all good to the priest. I said, I'm from another school. I said, powerful. Yeah.
People who didn't believe, people who gave up hope, it just is such a reminder that the power of the people is greater than anything else.
The struggle. Oh my gosh, we're not finished. We got many more political prisoners. But this is a victory. Lynne coming out.
I got two more.
Yes, I'm here to it was a joint effort, it was a movement, it was long-lasting, and it was relentless. Because people felt as though Lynne was unjustly accused of a crime and punishment that didn't fit whatever she did.
So many people surrounding her. We started at another one.
This is why we all struggled so hard, and each time we got to know as a group, redouble and redouble our efforts, and we, these are
This is our job, and my goal is that of reciprocity. Because if we don't defend those who defend us, then we will forever remain slaves. That's right. We know what Lynne Stewart represents, fighting for justice for everybody, but in particular, our freedom fighters and those people that we have who are behind the wall. I mean, she's been, say, whose attorney? I don't know whose attorney she hasn't been. So this is a glorious, glorious day. It is such a tribute to our freedom struggle. We have to feed up God, Lopez Rivera. He's been in jail just the same amount. 32 years. 32 32 years. You know, these are folks who are there for justice, for speaking truth, for standing up for what's right, for humanity. No.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Free them all.
Freedom all.
That's right.
Thank you. Thank you.
I wish
Thank you.
Pam was here. I know, I spoke to her. Feeling it would be wonderful. She would love it.
And you know, we get pictures sometimes.
Son Jeffrey in the back.
We can.
All right, so our final report will be from First Secretary of Workers' World Party, Larry Holmes, an update on the struggles of low-wage workers in the upcoming